Um, okay. Hello and welcome to Cha Cha's Chatathon. Are you so excited to be here, Clover Stroud? This is my special guest, Clover Stroud. I don't know which way you can see her. And she is the award-winning journalist, author, and Times best-selling author, mother, wife, sister, friend, carer, and cowgirl, and a whole and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome her here today. I've chosen her not simply because her books seem to have the word wild in the title. Yes, The Wild Other, and My Wild and Sleepless Nights, which I have to say is one of my favourite reads of all time, because it describes it with brutal clarity and honesty and beauty, the pain and joy and deliciousness that is motherhood. And you write with this kind of kick-ass prose that seems to distill everything that I've ever thought about a subject and just put it on the page so beautifully. So welcome here, Clover Stroud. Thank you for joining me. And we were just talking about, well, first of all, I wanted to say I'm called Wild Thing, which is a joke, and you really are a wild thing. You've been a cowgirl and done absolutely everything I've ever dreamt of, but you've actually done it. Have you found that you are slightly tamed by lockdown, or do you feel the opposite? You kick against it?
Well, I think that it's impossible not to feel the sort of heavy domesticity around you and the kind of, you feel a bit like a sort of panther pacing around the house with nowhere to go and nowhere to get out to. But I do find, and this kind of motherhood does that to you anyway, and I found that in the last few years when I haven't been able to kind of do naturally what I like to do, which is to go off to the other side of the world and be a cowgirl or run off to Russia or have some kind of big adventure, I really find that kind of big, exciting release for me happens on the page. It totally happens when I'm working, and it happens when I'm writing. And I write in a really, really confessional, really, really open way. And I will tell you in my books, about what is really going on in my head, the dark and the light. I will tell you about drugs. I'll tell you about sex. I'll tell you about my emotional intimacies. I'll tell you about what, wakes me up sweating in the middle of the night. And in a way, I think that kind of revealing so much of myself for me is the kind of wild outlet that you can't really, you can't access in normal life, and you certainly can't access it in lockdown. So in a way, maybe, I think I'm right. I mean, I've written a book during lockdown, so I feel like I'm, in a way, maybe it's been quite good for me actually.
Oh, yeah, well, you're going to share a little bit of that with us later, but what we were talking about when I first called you with this crazy proposal was what's happened to time. Something weird seems to have happened to time during lockdown, and we sort of differentiate weekends or nights or day, but actually it's all the same, and it's repeated in this Groundhog Day. And you write so beautifully about the different times in your life. I just wondered how you're finding you apportion your day.
Yeah, time is a huge preoccupation for me in the way that I live and in the way that I write. And I remember when my third of my five children was a newborn baby, and I said to my dad, like, I feel just so fascinated by time and wanting to hold on to her being a little baby, and yet also wanting it to move forward. And he said, "Oh, you must read Proust." And I remember having this newborn baby and trying to read Proust at the same time to understand time. But um,
that was
time,
very helpful advice. A man would have given that advice, yeah.
Time is on a kind of scalextrics, isn't it? It's sort of switched back. Sometimes that you're going slowly, slowly, slowly uphill, and then you're whooshing on downwards, and it's kind of in time, I suppose, with your emotional state as well. And I think pushing through the days. I mean, I've got several really small children who all need homeschooling, which is a head fuck. It really is. There's no other way to describe it. And then there are completely amazing other moments. My 20-year-old son has been at home for an extra year. He was supposed to be off at Manchester Art School. So I've kind of had this sense that time is something infinitely precious in a weird kind of way during lockdown. And but there is also that sense of like okay, you've just got to sort of plod through the days, particularly at this time of year. I think the first lockdown went really, really quickly last spring because it was that incredible weather. We're lucky enough to live in the countryside, but now living surrounded by mud and darkness, and I've got, you know, various animals and ponies and things. Time is going. I mean, January, I think, went more slowly than any other bit of time that I've lived through, really. And the monotony is hard. Days which have no changing colour, no changing light. And also, I was talking with my husband about this, Pete, like the fact that we all talk about the virus and lockdown and what's going to happen with it. We're all having the same conversations as well, which makes us feel kind of stuck in this time. You know, we've been talking about this big thing that's been going on since for at least a year now, and that does a weird kind of stultifies time, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, I
So,
think we should ban it as a subject. What,
yeah.
what I would love you, if you wouldn't mind, is reading a tiny bit of this
Cool.
book that, because you, in a way, you capture that time of childhood so beautifully and its transience. And I guess as a mother, I feel that fleetingness and the desire to hold on to it, which you've done so beautifully in your book. And I just wondered if you'd read us a tiny.
I will read you. This is actually right from the end of the book. It's about it's about motherhood. It's about all the different stages of motherhood. It's about my very, very personal experience of motherhood. But this is the end of the book when my son Jimmy had kind of gone through a lot of the normal sort of teenage stuff that teenagers do of pushing back against me, I suppose. And I had a newborn baby. My youngest child, Lester, was a newborn baby. And this is the kind of reconciliation, and it is about time actually as well. I might cry when I read it because thinking about Jimmy always makes me cry. So the bit that I'm reading it from is we're up on the Ridgeway near to where we live, which is some very beautiful downs, and we've been for a walk together, and he's walking ahead of me. He's 18 this bit. As he walks further away from me into the thickening dusk, I watch him getting smaller, realizing that all the moments of motherhood I've lived through with him lead here, to this perfect instance of feeling together, but also quite distinct from each other, and also separating from one another all the time. It hurts. A skylark cries above us as Jimmy suddenly starts jogging, the space getting bigger as he leaves me behind, and he's calling Pablo, our dog, who jumps and dances and runs beside him. And I have to stop because I'm almost winded with the breathless sense of certainty that while my love for Jimmy will always grow, the spaces between us will get bigger and bigger. Is that what being a mother really feels like in the end? This sense that your child will walk further and further away from you? Is this what all those moments of motherhood have led to? This sense of loss. I want to reach out and shout to Jimmy and tell him to stop, to come back, to pull him close so that we can go back to the beginning and start again. The light is changing as we walk, the brightness altering so that the first long streaks of cloud in the sky look like silver shards of light, slicing through the dark pink glow of the evening. Jimmy, look, I call to him, and he spins round to face me. Look at the clouds, Jimmy. He laughs, tipping his face up to the brilliant changing sky. Then he looks back towards me, raising his hand as though he's telling me something. But I can't hear, and he whistles to Pablo. He looks away and keeps walking. I look away to the distant valley below, where a train moves quickly through the landscape, then vanishes. When I look back at the chalk path snaking ahead of me, Jimmy is already reaching the top of the hill. I feel the last warmth of the evening joining with all this love which surrounds us. And I realise that he's so far ahead of me now, I can hardly see him anymore.
That's
when I write, what I'm trying to do when I write is to describe and put onto the page feeling, what stuff feels like, what life feels like. So when I write, I re-feel it, and when I read it, even though I've read that, you know, many times in the whole writing process, I've read it at book events and so on, I still feel it again. And that's why it's always very emotional for me reading it. And I suppose that's what we were talking about, like how do you find excitement? That's kind of the exhilaration of being able to describe feeling like that. And I hope that, I hope it's as powerful for readers as well.
It is absolutely as powerful as for readers, and then there is that amazing transposition, isn't there, for a writer, when you something's in your head and your, or maybe your heart, and then it goes to your head, and then it goes to the page, and so often it doesn't translate, and you're trying as a writer just to get it to work.
Yeah.
But this so works, and so what when you read it, when you write it, and when you're reading it out loud, the reader is feeling the same thing. You feel that sense so keenly. I sobbed. I sobbed.
I want you to do that. I'm pleased as well. I want the writing to do that.
But I think that brings us very neatly, and I think quite importantly, onto that juxtaposition between life and death that you're now exploring in your new book, because you've had to deal with this extraordinary grief of losing your sister so young and so amazing.
Yeah, my sister died just before at the end of 2019. She had had breast cancer for 4 years, but she died very, very quickly. She had had a good prognosis just a few days before, and then she suddenly died. So it was a very, very, very big shock. And it was very, she was an incredible person who had a circus and who was like incredibly creative and a powerful, iconic woman. And she died at 46, which was much too young. Yeah. But I've been, it's dealing with her death and dealing with much of the loss that I've dealt with in my life has made me so aware that when these things happen, they are life itself. And that we think, where there's been some trauma, there's been some tragedy, there's been a death, it's life has gone terribly wrong. But what I guess I've had a lot of loss in my life, and what I've been trying to kind of describe and get my head around is that this is life, and death in a sense is life. And that's what I'm trying to write about in my new book, is the kind of way of looking directly at death and living with it and living around it, and giving death a kind of color, I suppose. We think of death as something dark, grey, muted, but actually death, sort of, when you come close to it, it sort of it can inject your life with a real color and a real desire to live and a real need to kind of flourish and to feel things. And so that's a way of bearing this sort of unbearable loss, and the unbearable sadness, for me, has been a way of trying to bring a kind of energy that has been sparked up, I suppose, since my sister's death. Because actually, the actual fact of her death is just so hard to deal with that it often, it feels like an unbearable sorrow to have to live with. So how can you turn that into something life-giving and invigorating? And that's what I've been trying to do with this new book, basically.
Oh, it sounds wonderful, and I can't wait to read it. Does it have a title yet?
I haven't got a title yet. No. I've just finished the first draft. It's got to be with my publisher in March, so I've got like a couple of months to work on it, and I think the title will come at some point in the next couple of months. I don't know what it's called yet.
It's got to have wild in the title, surely. would you mind? Oh, and very sweetly, you have offered. I begged you. You have not. I have begged you if we can have a little tiny sneak peek, and you very sweetly said yes.
Yes. No, it's really exciting to be reading this, because this is the first time that I've read it to anybody else, and actually the only person that's really seen any of this is my husband Pete. And so this is I'm just trying to describe the feeling of death coming into your life when you're the one who's left alive, when you've lost somebody you love. So this is a bit about that. Until now, I've seen grief and the life around death as a dull grey. It was the kind of shade I would not paint any of the rooms in my house. I have green window frames in the kitchen, an orange room for dirty laundry, a turquoise cooker and a pink sitting room. I painted the bookshelves in my children's blue bedroom bright yellow. My bedroom is plastered with paper covered in green leaves, so that I can feel myself outside in the colour of the fields, even when I'm trying to take myself to the darkness of sleep. I thought until now that grief was muted and almost tasteful, but just too murky shade of grey. When it came into my life after Mum died, I wanted to get through it and out of it as quickly as possible, like staying as a guest in a too neat house I was going to make a mess of. This grief that arrived in the 2 days as my sister lay dying wasn't grey at all. It was messy and so bright it felt totally blinding, not neat, the opposite of order. A ball smashed straight through a lineup of luminous skittles, sending all parts of life whirling. Grief for my sister is every colour. It's the bright orange of a tangerine that suddenly appears on the pavement in front of me when I'm walking through Oxford a few weeks after her death, wondering where she's gone. It's the bright green of the flashing eyes of a cat that's suddenly there when I wail at her, "Show me where you are." It's the violent dark blue of the sky after I flung my head back too hard towards the night sky because I was trying to feel her. It's a pink rage I feel when someone says to me, "I don't think I could cope without my sister. I can't imagine my life without my sister. We're so close." Pink is the colour I concentrate when that woman says that to me and I want to slap her in the face. And my immediate grief for my sister is fucking messy too. Tears smudged the ink on all my pages. Tears ran down my face as I mashed mince into meatballs for my children, so that I had to wipe my greasy, meaty hands on the back of my black jeans. Grief made me fail to wash my hair for days on end, sent mascara streaking down my face, made me sweat. I swear that grief gave me cystitis. And suddenly, after weeks of not wanting to be touched, not wanting to be heard or seen, grief made me want to fuck too. I wanted to feel alive, even as I felt dead. My grief is an understanding of death, and so the colours that it brings to me are starting to show me that death can make the life we have left much, much brighter. Now I do not worry about it passing. I want to hold on to it. I don't want the world to spread backwards into the normal colours of daytime. I want to remain electric, alert.
Oh, wow, Clover. That was thrilling. That was the electric shock of grief purely felt, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing it. And
it's a pleasure.
I guess I could talk to you all day and listen to you read all day and read your books all day. But the idea of these tiny little, tiny chats is just to make a connection and just to say that in being locked up and locked in and this time of extraordinariness, just having that connection just for a few moments changes the whole tenor of the day.
Totally.
And just makes it joyous and extraordinary and has transformed my day into something magical. So as much as I want to talk to you, and I'm hoping that we can talk again soon.
So do I.
I want to say thank you, and to say to the only reason for doing this is to share what I feel is an extraordinary privilege to know someone like you and to have access to your work and to your thoughts and your minds and a desire to share them with other people.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really, really lovely. I would like to chat all day too.
And then dreaming of that time, it will happen. But until now, I'm going to say thank you. And thank you. And thank you. And love to you and all your family. And farewell.
Bye-bye.